North Korea this week removed all references to uniting the Korean Peninsula from its constitution. The constitution had previously said the regime sought the reunification of the homeland, but that clause has now been deleted. For more on what this could mean, we're joined today by Professor Min Jeong-hun, professor at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Min, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Right. So what does this latest constitutional revision signify?
Well, as you mentioned, it is known that North Korea's revised constitution has a new territorial clause and dropped all references to unification with South Korea. So it suggests that North Korea emphasizes its intention on the two hostile states policy. So the revised constitution showed that North Korea has defined its territory as the land bordering China and Russia to the north and South Korea to the south, along with its adjacent territorial waters and airspace. And in addition, all references to reunification, including terms such as peaceful reunification and the great national unity, were eliminated from the Constitution. So personally, I think that such changes in the Constitution signal Pyongyang's willingness or intention to project an image of a normal state. And meanwhile, the Constitution did not identify South Korea as a primary foe, although North Korean leader Min Jeong-hun previously characterized South Korea as an enemy. So it suggests that the Constitution laid the groundwork for peaceful coexistence between the two Koreas. So it is expected that there would be little change in stably maintaining security situation on the Korean Peninsula.
I see, but despite that revision, South Korea's Blue House says it will still pursue a policy of peaceful coexistence on the Korean Peninsula. And Seoul's intelligence agency also says that although the North has defined the two Koreas as separate states, hostility toward the South has been significantly reduced. What's your take on this? How should Seoul reflect the latest revision in its policy toward North Korea?
Yes, it is likely that South Korea will continue to pursue its peaceful coexistence policy on the peninsula, although North Korea's revised constitution distanced itself from South Korea. As you mentioned, South Korean government said that it would conduct a comprehensive review about North Korea's constitutional revision. And North Korea's revised constitution reflected the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's policy shift that North Korea would regard South Korea as a separate country rather than a partner for eventual unification. And it also removed the pledge to achieve Korean reunification, and it newly defined the North Korean territory without reference to South Korea. Meanwhile, the revised constitution mentioned that North Korea would never tolerate any infringement on its territory bordering South Korea, but it stopped, again, describing South Korea as an enemy. So there are no hostile remarks toward South Korea in the Constitution. So we can see that North Korea made the two states stance clear, and it has lowered its hostility toward South Korea. So it is expected that South Korea would pursue the peaceful coexistence policy on the Korean Peninsula and would make a consistent effort to reduce tensions on the peninsula and improve the relations between two Koreas.
Right, and North Korea also defended its possession of nuclear weapons at a recent meeting at the United Nations, and it said it's not bound to any treaty on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. So how should South Korea and the international community interpret this message?
Yes, North Korea argued that it is not bound under any circumstances by NPT and insisted that any attempt to force Pyongyang to fulfill treaty obligation is a violation of international law. And as you may remember, North Korea formally withdrew from NPT in 2003. And the North Korean state media said that the North Korean ambassador to the United Nations, that he argued that North Korea's nuclear program reflects its obligation under the law on nuclear first policy and the constitution, which defined the country's legal status as a nuclear armed state. And so he claimed that North Korea rejects acts of any specific countries, including U.S., that take issues with its access, North Korea's access to nuclear weapons and exercise of its defensive rights as a sovereign nation. And the North Korea's recently revised constitution stipulated its status and again, the nuclear armed state, and it also codified Chairman Kim Jong-un's authority to command the use of nuclear weapons for the first time. But so I think that North Korea has confirmed its status as a nuclear armed state even through its revised constitution. It's like the institutionalization of its nuclear state. But I also think that it should be noted that such an argument came out amid expectations that North Korea could be on the agenda at the upcoming summit between U.S. and China in Beijing next week. So I think North Korea want to reaffirm its argument that North Korea is a nuclear armed state, and it could not be negotiable when it resumes the summit diplomacy with the United States. So it seems that North Korea want to enhance its bargaining power before the upcoming summit between U.S. and China, although it's not clear if President Trump would meet Chairman Kim Jong-un when he comes to Beijing next week.
I see. And the North Korean women's soccer team is scheduled to make a rare visit to South Korea for a match. How symbolic is this, and could this possibly help improve inter-Korean relations?
Anyway, it's a very great news to hear. Yeah, and as you mentioned, it is known that North Korean women's football club, not the national team, club will play in Suwon near Seoul later this month. The Korea Football Association said that Daegoyang Women's FC will travel down to Suwon to play with the Suwon FC women in the semi-finals of the Asian Football Confederation Women's Champions League on May 20th. And this will be the first appearance that a North Korean women's football club play in South Korea. Of course, in 2005 and 2013, the North Korean women's national team came down to South Korea and played at the East Asian Football Federation Women's Championship. And as you may remember, the North Korean women's national team also played at the 2014 Incheon Asian Game, and they won the gold medal. So the North Korea's decision to send its women's football club to South Korea this time is drawing attention because there is a growing expectation that the event could serve as a momentum to ease tensions between the two Koreas. And it will be the first trip by North Koreans to South Korea after Chairman Kim emphasized the two hostile state policy. The Chairman Kim mentioned that inter-Korean relations were like two states hostile to each other in late 2023, and he also called South Korea the most hostile state recently and reaffirmed his intention to bolster the two hostile state stance. So, and the South Korean government is cautious about making too much expectation about the North Korea's visit this time and insists that sports should be kept separate from politics. But some experts, including myself, see the event as an opportunity to potentially resume a dialogue between the two Koreas because sports have historically played in bridging the two Koreas together. So we will see what will actually happen later this month.
Right, I guess we'll have to see how that match plays out. All right, Professor Min, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.